Hello there, friends. This is our Alimentary Canal Part 2 video, starting with the stomach. Before I get into this, make sure that you have your coloring sheet and your fill-in-the-blank PowerPoint slides. If you don't have those right now, pause the video at this moment and go and get them. And when you come back, we can finish. So, we left off with the esophagus and those muscle contractions squeezing to get the food down to your stomach. Well, in the stomach, it's a pretty busy place. Remember, in your mouth, there was both mechanical digestion happening with your teeth chewing up the food, and then there's chemical digestion happening with amylase, which helps with carbohydrate digestion. In the stomach, you also have both mechanical and chemical digestion taking place. The chemical digestion is started by a substance called pepsin. Now, with this pepsin, remember I told you that a lot of times when you see the name of a molecule and it has ACE at the end, it means that it is an enzyme. That's true, but not every enzyme has ACE at the end, and this is a perfect example. So pepsin is a protein digesting enzyme. So notice it says it's starting the chemical digestion of proteins. But the other thing to keep in mind is that pepsin's not the only gig in town right now. You know that your stomach has acid in it. If you ever have thrown up and had vomitus come out your nose and the inside of your nose be burning or your throat be burning from the vomit, that's because of the hydrochloric acid. And yes, that is the same acid that you talked about in chemistry class. And when you have heartburn, see, what happens is the stomach is lined with tissue that includes cells that can make mucus, and the mucus forms a layer around the inside of your stomach so the hydrochloric acid can't get to the cells underneath. Well, sometimes that mucus gets worn away, and so the hydrochloric acid does come into contact with the cells in your stomach, and that can cause an ulcer. That's what an ulcer is. But sometimes also the hydrochloric acid can back up into your esophagus, and that's what heartburn is. And if you've never had heartburn before, consider yourself lucky. It's not real comfortable. Um, so that's your chemical digestion, starts the chemical digestion of protein in the stomach with the pepsin and the hydrochloric acid. But then your muscle contractions of the stomach also help with mechanical breakdown of food. Think of it this way. I think everybody probably has gotten a packet of ketchup at a fast food place and you forget to mix it up. And so when you open it up, you get the watery stuff that comes out first, and it's kind of gross. Um, that's a vinegar that helps to make the ketchup be what it is. So I've seen some people, before they open their packet of ketchup, they shake it back and forth like this. I do this type of a thing. I will knead, Knead, knead the packet to make sure that it's all mixed up. And that's what your stomach does. Your stomach does this type of a thing while the food is in it so that it will help to mix the pepsin and the hydrochloric acid in with the food, and it also helps to break the food down into smaller pieces again. So you've got both chemical and mechanical digestion of food going on in the stomach. At either end of the stomach, on the entrance point and the exit point, there are muscles that you actually are familiar with, at least in theory. There are sphincter muscles. Do you remember what the two characteristics of sphincter muscles are? Giving you a second to think about it. One characteristic is they're circular, and the other characteristic is that they open and close an opening. So they do this kind of a thing. And that's to allow, in this case, food to, once it gets into the stomach, it can close, the sphincter closes, and so the food stays in the stomach. And then at the other end of the stomach, that sphincter muscle closes and holds the food in the stomach for as long as it needs to be. So there's a sphincter valve found between the esophagus and the stomach, and again between the stomach and the small intestine. Now here's a diagram of what your stomach looks like. And right here is where one sphincter muscle would be, and right here is where the other sphincter muscle would be. So food comes down the esophagus. Let me get a different color for you. Food comes down the esophagus into the stomach, and this sphincter muscle closes. Then the stomach does its job. It mixes it up and it adds the pepsin and the hydrochloric acid. And then after, a cue is sent to the brain and the brain says, oh, it's time for the food to move on. That would be the hypothalamus, by the way. Then the sphincter on this end of the stomach opens up and the food is allowed to exit into the small intestine. So there's the stomach for you. On your coloring sheet, the stomach is letter D. Now let me show you over here. So the entire stomach is in this neighborhood, right from here all the way down. But do you see in this place right here where it says T plus D and W plus D? It's because your abdominal cavity is very crowded, and so you do have organs that are overlapping each other. So in this area where it says T plus D, that's the liver where it overlaps in front of the stomach. And then down here where it says W plus D, that's the pancreas that goes behind the stomach, because you got to just kind of shove things in there wherever there's space. So you are going to color the stomach light blue, and I would like you to do that right now. And you're going to, in this area where it's just D, you can color it just solid light blue. But in this area where it's T plus D, why don't you do it like striped, because you're going to want to have room to put the other color in when we get to the liver and when we get, stop it, when we get to the pancreas. So, holy cow, I'm just having all kinds of problems here. You get the idea. So in the area where it's T plus D and W plus D, either stripes or checkerboard or polka dots or whatever floats your boat, it's fine. But light blue for the stomach. Go ahead and pause and do that right now, and you'll notice at the top, there's where the word stomach is. Make sure you stay in the lines. So pause the video and do that right now. Right. From the stomach, the food that now has had carbohydrate digestion beginning and protein digestion beginning. What was the third category of nutrient that we talked about? Fats, that's right. We haven't even mentioned fats yet, but hang on, that's coming. So we've got some mechanical digestion that's happening. We've got some chemical digestion of carbohydrates that started, chemical digestion of proteins that started, and our next stop along the way is to go to the small intestine. Small intestine is a very busy place, especially the first part of the small intestine, because even though we started chemical digestion of carbohydrates and we started chemical digestion of proteins, that's a very small part of what actually goes on. Most of the chemical digestion of nutrients, all nutrients, and then all the absorption of nutrients happens in the small intestine. Specifically, into the first region of the small intestine. It's divided into 3 regions. It's the first region that does the chemical digestion and absorption of nutrients. And that first region is called the duodenum. Now, the duodenum, it's a strange looking word. Duodenum is also an acceptable pronunciation, but I think that sounds kind of goofy, so I go with duodenum because it sounds more aristocratic. Duodenum. How is your duodenum today? This is where you will see digestion, and we'll get to the different enzymes in just a second. But then the absorption of nutrients happens here too, and this is very important. So what happens is, and I've got some pictures here in just a moment, the wall of the duodenum has lots and lots and lots of tiny folds in it, in the inner membrane of it, and those are called villi. Singular is villus, but plural, and there are thousands of them, is called the villi. And it's here where absorption of nutrients takes place. Remember that absorption of nutrients requires capillaries because capillaries are the only place that gas exchange and nutrient absorption can take place. I'll toss that one in there for you. And the reason why you want to have all these villi is to increase the surface area available for absorption because if you had, this much surface area, that's great. But if inside this circle right here, this tube right here, you had a lot of folds in that, you can have a lot more surface area, a lot more digestion, just like we talked about the surface area in the brain. The gyri are the folds in the surface of the cerebral cortex, so that you get more brain tissue in there so the brain can function more efficiently and be more effective in what it does. The second part of the small intestine is the jejunum. There are some villi in the jejunum, but not nearly enough, or not nearly as many. And then by the time you get to the end of the small intestine, to the ileum, then you will not see any of the villi whatsoever. And you can see down at the bottom here, I've put down what colors I want you to do each of the three different sections. Duodenum is red, jejunum is light green, and ileum is purple. And you can either pause now or you can pause in just a moment after I show you the pictures of the villi so that you can see to do the coloring. So either pause now or you can wait a second. Here's what the villi look like on the inside of your small intestine. At first glance, it kind of looks like some freaky coral reef type of a thing, doesn't it? Well, that's what the inside of your duodenum looks like. And here is what one of these villi, if you were to cut them long ways, like if this were a banana and you wanted to cut it, and yes, I know, it looks like something else too when they show it in this view, but get your minds out of the gutter, gentlemen. So what happens is, in the middle of this villus, you get all these capillaries. You can see the capillaries, these red parts. So the nutrients can diffuse from, why did it not go to my pen? Oh, there we go. From the small intestine into the villus, and it can be absorbed into the capillaries. So you got to have capillaries here, and you've got to have the capillaries close to where the nutrients are going to be, because diffusion, it's got to be over short distance. So that's what the villus looks like cut long ways, and that's how come you need to have all of these, so you can look at how much more surface area you get for absorption of nutrients from there. All right, if you haven't already paused to do the coloring, do that now. All right, so the last little bit for here today is to just real briefly run through the enzymes produced by the small intestine, and here is where we get the ACE again. The small intestine itself makes some peptidases, peptide, pepsin, protein. So the peptidases help complete protein digestion. Oh, here we go with fat digestion. ACE, there's an ACE, there's an enzyme. Intestinal lipase, for those of you who are in honors anatomy and you've been doing the word ending quizzes, LIP means fat. So lipase means enzyme that digests fat. And then there's a trio of carbohydrate digesting enzymes: sucrase, which breaks down sucrose, maltase, which breaks down maltose, and lactase, which breaks down lactose. Lactose, that is if someone's lactose intolerant and they get a little gassy when they have some ice cream, that would be why, because their body's not producing enough lactase. And maltose, that is broken down by maltase, this is not the sugar that's found in malts. Sorry. Maltose is a byproduct of starch digestion, so it helps break starch from a huge molecule. You get some other amylase and some other enzymes that break it down into maltose, and then maltase can break the maltose down even further. So that's where we're going to stop for today. We'll pick it up tomorrow with the large intestine. Go blue.